Well, good morning. And the moment we wait for with bated breath and anticipation, the two bees who are back together and absolutely wreaking havoc in the television world as well as the legal world. Good morning, gentlemen.
Morning, Keith.
Good morning, Keith.
And you brought
And,
Casper along, Philip.
Say again, I'm
But-
sorry.
You brought Casper along.
Well, there's not a lot I can do about that because this room is the best Wi-Fi location in the house, and that's where his cage is.
Yeah, no.
I've got to say, Keith, I asked Philip if he would take a photo or get a photo of Casper because my daughters were keen to see him. And he's a very gorgeous canary, if you like that sort of thing. You know, couldn't eat a whole one, but no, but a very, very handsome young fellow, that canary.
Well, it's
Yes,
certainly
he's a
got wonderful
sweetheart.
voice.
I'm very pleased to have him as my pet.
Yeah.
But now, Richard, you have recently finished a book
I have.
about a notorious murderer called Hawley Harvey Crippen,
Yes.
known as
It
Dr. Crippen.
was a colouring in book, and I hardly went over the lines at all, so that's fine.
No, well, you did tell that to me, and no, it's impressive that at your age you can still colour in. No, it's good.
Yeah. Well, luckily because I've got the shakes, it just sort of I just press the crayon that they don't allow me anything other than crayons, obviously,
No,
and my shaky hand just does the rest of the work for me. So that's
yes, well, we must buy Keith some colouring in books and some crayons because
Oh, absolutely.
he'd finish them in a day.
yes.
Um,
I saw that Carly Simon, the singer, has said that she has Parkinson's,
Yes.
I
and
read up on that yesterday. Yeah,
yeah, and
a really tough time before the Parkinson's.
Is one sorry?
yeah.
Yes. Philip sent me just one word: vain.
Yes, you're so vain. Yeah,
I bet you think this program's about you.
yeah.
That very distinctive voice.
Yes.
Well, I remember her. I mean, she's been around for a couple of decades, hasn't she?
Oh, at least.
Yeah.
At least.
And it's still recording.
Yeah.
I think you two know another bloke like that. But,
Yeah, I know one. Yes, I'm looking at him at the moment.
anyway, gentlemen, what's been happening in the courts, and is there a sort of an anniversary of anything that was shocking or important in the history of the courts?
I don't think there's been an anniversary of any kind. There's it'd be interesting to see what that Undertaker gets, who kept the bodies, in particular of babies, and gave families sort of a random pile of ashes that wasn't particularly their child. And it'd be interesting to see what sort of sentence he gets, because it's not an offence that is commonly before the Crown Court. In other words, not effectively preventing the proper disposal of.
Uh-huh.
But it's a huge number of families who have been affected. I think they've had, as you know, Keith, where somebody's been adversely affected by a criminal conduct, they can write what's called a victim personal statement. I think that's Phil trying to call me. Excuse me a moment. I've got Phil on the phone.
Okay.
Hello, Phil.
My Wi-Fi has failed, I'm afraid.
Okay.
Can you carry on until my Wi-Fi is back?
I tend to carry on most of the time, Phil. Yeah, sure. Join us when you can. Yeah.
Thanks. That's the reason, though. Bye.
Bye. No, so it'll be interesting to see what he gets for that. So the victim person statement. There are so many families affected by this, but really it's taken. So far I think it's taken them 2 days of just people reading out their victim personal statements or having them read into the record by a barrister. All rather moving stuff, as you can imagine. But I'm not sure whether he's going to be. I would imagine the process will finish this week. So either today or tomorrow, he will be weighed off by the judge, who I think has already told him that he's going to go to prison. Obviously, quite why he's not in prison already, I don't know. He's been on bail, which I find slightly odd. But there we go.
Right. So
Sorry.
just before we get launched into other things, I no, you can't hear us. Ah. Okay.
Yeah, he'll come back. Don't worry.
Philip's having some problems. For some reason, I don't know whether it's some anniversary, but the gunpowder plot seems to have concentrated people's minds.
Oh,
And the one thing that I remember in my own investigation into that incident in English history is that Guy Fawkes actually cheated the hangman by walking to the edge of the platform on which the gallows had been erected and throwing himself off and breaking his neck, because otherwise he would have been hanged, drawn and quartered.
Yes, I've heard something similar to that. Yes, whether that's true or whether it's apocryphal, I don't really know. But it is quite possible, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean it's not the sort of thing that would be handed down without an element of truth in it. I mean, I'm a great believer that history has got to be a combination of written plus the rumours handed down from father to son.
Yes. Phil, can you hear us now?
Yes, I can hear you.
We can hear you, and we can hear, even more importantly, we can hear Casper.
Yeah,
yes.
Well, my apologies. Having complimented you on your Wi-Fi, mine crashed. It's insecure connection, which is a problem I've had for many years, as you know.
I was going to say that's very much your personal life. I'm aware of that.
Yes. That's why they call me Justin. That's my real name. Were you talking about Guy Fawkes, Keith?
Yes, I was.
Yeah. It is claimed that he jumped off the ladder.
Yeah.
And was lucky enough to break his neck, thereby avoiding the agonies of the rest of it. The others weren't so lucky.
Well, according to some written evidence, some of the plotters were being tortured and summarily executed, even while they were sort of clearing the House of Commons.
Yes.
Yeah.
If it was
yes. Well.
Yes.
Well, we were, Richard, I think, going to talk about Hawley Harvey Crippen.
Yes, Dr. Crippen, who I would imagine, Keith, you must have interviewed.
I did, just before he got onto the ship.
Yeah. He was, of course, he died in 1910, so you would have been a cub reporter, but nevertheless. I'm sure they would have sent you out.
Yes, he was executed on November the 23rd, 1910.
Well, there we go.
At Pentonville.
Phil's the fact man. Originally American, and there are similarities here between somebody that you and I, Keith, have spoken about before, John Hay. In that really his life was as a fraudster, and the ultimate act in his case only one person, in Haig's case certainly at least 6, of killing somebody, really flowed from the multiple frauds that he committed. And so he grew up and purported to qualify as a doctor, albeit his qualifications weren't recognized in this country. And he had a rather peripatetic life. He sort of shuttled across the Atlantic more often than David Frost used to do when he did his talk shows. But he worked at various hospitals, purporting at different times to be a specialist in a whole range of things. He purported to be an obstetrician dealing with problems that only women have. He purported to be an ear, nose and throat doctor, and also an expert in dentistry. But perhaps most importantly, from that point of view, he was a great advocate of homeopathy. Now, I'm going to upset at least your viewer, if not his dog. Homeopathy is absolute garbage. It bears no relationship to science as we know it. And it's the theory that you introduce to a person who's got an illness a very tiny dose of what it is that you think is wrong with them, and this is the weirdness of homeopathy. The smaller the amount is, the more diluted it is, the more powerful its effects. And so he was a quack. And he had various jobs peddling homeopathic remedies, as I said, in America and here as well. And was involved in a range of businesses that were shown to be fraudulent. He also got married. He got married to a woman called Charlotte Bell in America when he was still relatively young. And she unfortunately died. And it's not quite understood why she did die, because she was a young, perfectly healthy woman. And it was only really after everything else came to light that her family in particular believed that Crippen had killed her. No evidence that would prove it in a court of law, but it's an odd feature that his first wife died in that way. And then he met a woman who would become his second wife. And she went under various names. She was of sort of European extraction. But she wanted to be an opera singer. And she took the name Belle Elmore. And really that was how she was known by everybody who knew her. She couldn't make it as an opera singer. They did get married. She got pregnant. And he procured an abortion for her because the last thing he wanted ever in his life was to have a child. Because in fact, he'd had a son with Charlotte, his first wife, and had just farmed him off to relatives to look after. And really, his son didn't see him for decades at all. But with Belle, she got pregnant, as I said. He procured an abortion, which at the time, of course, was illegal in this country because he'd settled in England by now. And then he persuaded her, and she bitterly regretted it. He persuaded her that she should have an operation to have her ovaries removed, thereby preventing her from ever becoming pregnant again. And she did have that operation. And whilst he wasn't the surgeon who conducted it, it's believed that he, in fact, was an assistant to the surgeon, which is a very odd feature that you would wish to be ministering to your wife while she was going through an operation that you knew that she didn't particularly want to have, but he had pressured her into it. But importantly, this, as part of that operation, she had to have an incision on her midline, so below the navel and down to the pubic bone. And she did have that, and as a result, suffered and retained a scar there. And that becomes of significance later. So it became a very unhappy marriage. She sought comfort in food, it would seem, and put on quite a bit of weight. He didn't find her sexually attractive anymore, and she didn't find him in the least bit attractive in any way. And it may well be that because of the complications of the operation that she had, that she was incapable of having sexual intercourse again. But nevertheless, they did live together still. And having failed to become an opera singer, she then moved to vaudeville, effectively, to the theatres that produced variety shows. A little like, if you remember it, Keith, and I'm sure you will, the good old days, where there's a series of acts, different types, acrobats, comedians, dancers, and singers, and she was one of those singers. And she was known to Mary Lloyd, who was a very famous music hall artiste at the time. And she filled her time with that. Crippen, meantime, worked at various establishments in central London, peddling fake medicines. And whilst he was never the leading light in those, there were other people who were rather more proficient fraudsters than him who did that. He was an important part of it because he was their doctor. And they could say, look, this is this man, and he has worked at the following establishments, which is true, he had done. But all of them for very short periods of time. And that might reflect upon his inability to do the job properly. But it did provide him with an income, and there's some speculation as to what other income he had, because he did certainly lavish upon Belle a lot of very expensive jewelry and a huge amount of clothes and furs and things like that. So they had an image on one level of being a very successful couple, the doctor and the singer. But he wasn't, as I said, happy with her, and she certainly wasn't happy with him. So it was a marriage of convenience. There's no question about that. Now, meantime, he had found that there was a secretary working where he did in one of these charlatan companies. And she was called Ethel. Originally, she was called Ethel Neve, and she then changed that to Ethel La Neve to make it sound more French. So, in other words, she had some pretensions herself.
Yeah, sounds like it.
And in fact, she was herself not averse to at least closing her eyes to the obvious frauds that were going on around her, if not actually actively being involved in them. And certainly towards the end of their relationship, she was active as his assistant and ultimately became his lover, which of course at the time was very much frowned upon. She too got pregnant, and he got her an abortion as well. And he kept telling her that his wife, Belle, he was going to divorce. Now, at the time, the only way you could divorce somebody really was to show adultery. That is, they'd had sex with somebody else. And as I said, it's very unlikely that Belle was physically capable of sexual intercourse after that rather botched removal of her ovaries. But he told Ethel time and time again, look, don't worry, she'll go to America, and if she goes to America, I can divorce her there. And it's true, it was very much easier to get a divorce in America at the time than it was in this country. And so he strung Ethel along with these stories, but she Ethel, was desperate to get married. And she nagged away at him about it. She was significantly younger than him and wanted the security of marriage. And indeed, he ended up going through a form of marriage ceremony with her, albeit, of course, he knew that he was thereby committing bigamy. But what's bigamy to a fraudster? You know, if it means that you retain your lover and all that her young body has to offer, then don't rock the boat.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Keith.
Is this second wife? I'm not clear how he met her.
What, Belle?
His second wife, yes.
Yeah, well, they met just by chance, really, through mutual acquaintances. And she had, as I said, European connections, and she traveled to America, and that's where they met originally. And then got married and came to this country, and then they were here sort of permanently. But as I said, he told Ethel, oh, don't worry, Belle's going to go to America, and as soon as she goes to America, I can go over there and I can get a divorce from her, because it's very much easier there than it is here. And he and Ethel set up home as Mr. and Mrs. Crippen. And that's the way it was. Now, Belle, in the meantime, because of her work in the music halls as a singer, she joined an organization called the Music Hall Ladies Guild. which included people like Mary Lloyd and many other female performers. And it was set up as a sort of quasi-charitable organisation, a sort of benevolent fund for women who, having had some role, and it didn't need to be as a performer, had some role in the music hall, but had fallen on hard times, could apply to them and seek assistance. And she, Belle, was a very active member of this, and she ended up very shortly after joining, she became the treasurer and was very highly thought of by the other women in the organisation. And they cared for her a great deal. I don't think any of them had an inkling that quite how unpleasant her marriage was, but they must have had some inkling of it, albeit he would appear occasionally at events. And indeed, one dinner, which was sort of included this guild and other music hall characters, he had the temerity to turn up with his new squeeze, and the women of the guild were outraged by this, that he should be there with what he just introduced as his secretary. She was his secretary, but she was also, of course, his lover. And so things continued. And there came a time when he clearly needed to find a solution to the problem of having two wives. And because he was a doctor, he was able to procure a whole range of drugs. And he went to a pharmacist who he knew and ordered a significant quantity of something which was in fact a poison. It could be used in very, very tiny quantities, which I suppose is the homeopathy of it. But he ordered he ordered so much of it that the pharmacist had to order more in for him. And what appears to have, well, Phil, can you tell us what he did?
Yes, the poison you're talking about was called hyoscine.
Yeah.
And in very small doses, it could be used to tranquilize, for want of a better word, because Belle was notoriously and extremely moody and would lose her temper with Crippen over minor things. So it was first thought that he was using this to sort of calm her down, but it is scolopamine, and it was really unusual. It came to pass, really unusual, that it had been used to actually kill Belle or anybody. It was a very unusual way of doing it. Normally they'd use arsenic or something like that. She disappeared, basically.
Yeah, and just dealing with her death, that would have been a very painful death if that was the drug that was administered.
Absolutely, it would have been dreadful.
And more drawn out than, for example, something like arsenic being used.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Sorry.
No, don't say sorry, but no, you're absolutely right. It would have been agonising.
Yeah. And she disappeared.
She disappeared, and the guild, the ladies in the guild you've mentioned, became very concerned because they would have expected her to let them know if she was, for example, going away, which is the story that Crippen told. He told everybody that she'd gone back to America alone to look after a sick relative.
Yeah.
That was his first story.
And he produced what purported to be a letter to the guild members from her, which he said that she was so upset that she dictated it to him, hence why it was in his handwriting.
2 letters, in fact.
2 letters, yeah, quite.
And delivered to the guild by Lenève.
Yes.
In his handwriting. Because, with hindsight, she was incapable of writing those letters because the poor thing was dead.
Yep.
But so in the end, the guild ladies went to the police. And a chief inspector from Scotland Yard called Drew turned up at the house.
I think it's Dew, isn't it? DEW.
DEW, you're quite right.
Dew, yeah.
Never make a mistake with a man who's read the book. He questioned Crippen about the disappearance of his wife.
Well, just before that, in fact, when the guild first went to the police just ignored them.
Now, that's the bit I didn't know, you see.
Yeah. So they went to the police and the police dismissed it and said, well, if she's gone away, she's gone away. And this is Dr. Crippen, what are you suggesting? You haven't got any evidence of that at all. And the guild decided that might be better to have, if a bloke went along and spoke to the police, and they got a bloke to go along, and he got knocked back as well. And it was only the 3rd occasion, as you say, Phil, that Officer Dew became interested and involved in the case. Sorry, you were saying he questioned.
No, I'm fascinated. I didn't know that at least 2 attempts to notify the police had fallen on deaf ears.
Yeah.
Anyway, he did question Crippen, and Crippen made his first major mistake because he blurted out to the copper that the story of her going to America to look after a sick relative was not true, that he'd made it up. And the truth was that she'd run away to America with her lover. So he was asserting now that she'd been an adulteress or was an adulteress,
yeah.
and was in America. And the police left it at that. And actually, the stuff I've read suggests that it would have gone no further.
That's right.
Had Crippen not made his second major mistake, because his nerve was broken by the visit, and he decided to flee the country with Lenève, disguised as a boy, short hair. He bought boys' clothing, and there was evidence at the trial from the outfitters of the clothing he bought in which he dressed Ethel. And they went to the continent first, and then they sailed, I think, from Antwerp, it doesn't matter.
Yes, it was Antwerp.
To America on a boat known as the SS Montrose. Well, the police now were getting more and more interested and went back to the house, which was entirely unoccupied, and did an absolutely thorough search, including the cellar. And in the cellar, they found underneath the flagstones a torso. In other words, a trunk, a human trunk. No head, no legs, no arms.
No bones.
No bones. And it had been put there in a form of quicklime, which normally would dissolve bones and flesh. But for some reason, and it's something to do with the earth underneath those flagstones and the clay, it was a clay soil. It converted the lime, whatever it was, into a preservative of flesh. And that is why, though the bones had disappeared, as you rightly point out, the flesh remained and was in a sort of a mummified state.
Yes.
So it was recovered.
It was bits, wasn't it? It wasn't sort of in a single piece.
Again, I didn't know that bit.
Yes, it was sort of effectively sort of joints of meat type thing. And the pathologists, who included Bernard Spilsby, who became
and that was his first major case. Yeah,
I know exactly. He became massively famous in the
absolutely
20th century. The opinion of both the pathologists was that the bones had been removed and disposed of elsewhere, as had the head. And whoever had done it must have had some medical training in dissection, which would fit with Crippen, of course.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And when the body was examined, because I heard you mention earlier before my Wi-Fi failed me again, she had had this dreadful operation.
Yep.
Whereby her ovaries had been removed because he didn't want children. And hence the abortion for Ethel as well.
Yes.
And there was a scar on the torso, exactly where it would be expected to be, consistent with such an operation.
Yes.
And the two Crown's pathologists, and particularly Spilsbury, were absolutely adamant that this was a scar.
Yeah.
Well, the defence, he was represented by a bloke called Tobin. The defence at trial were very keen to suggest this was not a scar. And the reason was that the renter medics they called, and it was almost laughable actually, they called a surgeon who'd never actually performed an operation. They called a second so-called pathologist who simply was barely qualified. And these two tried to persuade the court that it was not a scar, and the reason it wasn't a scar was because there were hair follicles around the flesh of the scar itself. Well, Spilsbury put paid to that idea by, yes, there were, in a wider scope, hair follicles, but they were non-relevant to the scar itself. So there we have two, if not more, ways of identification leading to the body being, well, Belle Elmore, as you've rightly said, was her stage name. Her real name was Cora. And so they had the body. Now, he's on the SS Montrose.
Yeah, sorry, just they had the body, but I think they were also able to show that there were traces of the poison in the flesh that they had.
Now, again, I bow to your knowledge. That's again, I didn't know.
Yeah, I think that's right. Yes.
Yeah.
Anyway. So they're on the boat.
They're on the boat, but their descriptions had been distributed, and these were in the days of working telegraphs, wireless telegraphy, and this is another big first. This is the big first in the case. Crippen and Leneve were actually arrested because the captain of the Montrose was very suspicious of them. He didn't believe Ethel was a boy, and he wirelessed Scotland Yard directly because the Montrose, which was quite a slow boat, was within range of wireless telegraphy with land. And so he telegraphed to the effect, suspected cellar murderers are on my boat. please take note. Well, they did take note, and Dew and colleagues, including 2 prison warders from Holloway, they boarded a faster boat and they arrived in Canada before Crippen and Lenève.
Just on that, you know, the captain of this boat, who was very perceptive, and did his utmost to reassure the pair of them that everything was fine. That
Yes.
Yeah, and you know, invited them to dine at his table, which is of course a great honour on a boat, on a ship, that you get to dine at the captain's table. And he really did that so he could get a proper look at them.
Yes.
And became, you know, utterly convinced that that's who they were, and that that purported boy, the son, was in fact a woman.
Quite so. Much to their surprise, Dew and his team boarded the Montrose off the Newfoundland coast and arrested the pair on suspicion of murder. Crippen allegedly said, words to that, "What a relief! I can't stand the tension anymore. I'm glad this is over," or words to that effect. So they were brought back to the UK. They had the old-fashioned committal proceedings. In other words, when a case is sent from a magistrate's court to the Crown Court, in this case, the Old Bailey, and that was done at Bow Street Magistrates Court.
An odd little feature of that is, you know, that this was the news story at the time. In fact, apart from the coronation of the new king, which was coming up, but this was the big story. Gilbert of Gilbert and Sullivan attended the committal proceedings.
My goodness.
Yeah.
Yes.
And Winston Churchill went to the Crown Court, well, the Assize Court trial.
Yeah. Well, we forget in these days of instantaneous news and technology that this didn't exist in those days.
No.
When you consider that the arrest was because, for the first time ever, wireless telegraphy worked, and only because the ship was in range of land, then that's the era we're talking about.
Yes.
It's when people queued up in their thousands to watch 5-day test matches.
Yes.
You know. But so back to Blighty, committed for trial to the Bailey, the Central Criminal Court as we know it. Remanded, obviously, both in custody, and they were tried together.
In fact, no, they weren't, Phil. Sorry. They were going to be tried together.
Oh.
And for reasons that I don't begin to understand, the prosecution decided that they try them separately, him first
Right.
and then her. And I think the suggested reason that they did that is that she was going to get a sympathy vote, and they didn't want that in any way to affect his trial. I think that's tactically unwise myself. I don't know what your view on that is.
I really, again, I bow because I didn't know that. Because there's a picture of them, albeit I accept at Bow Street.
Yes.
There was an illegal picture taken.
That's right.
Of the pair of them in the dock at Bow Street.
Yes. And they were together, and they were committed together. And it was only when it got to the Crown Court, sorry, the Bailey, that the prosecution made this decision. Which right, yeah.
She wasn't charged with murder itself.
That's quite right.
And now, as you tell me and the viewer that she was tried separately, she was actually represented by Effie Smith.
That's right.
Who became Lord Birkenhead.
Yep.
Now, looking at the way Crippen's defence was run, it was a denial of doing it, it was an assertion that the body had been there long before Crippen and Bell had moved into Hilldrop Crescent, which is where the house was, and also an absolute insistence that Ethel should not be incriminated. So that was the defence upon Crippen's instructions that Tobin ran. Now, the brief had first been offered to a very famous Edwardian barrister called Sir Edward Marshall Hall, who was as famous as a barrister as Spilsbury became as a pathologist. I mean, these were big names. And my understanding is that Marshall Hall returned the brief, in other words, declined it, because he felt that Crippen was running the wrong defence.
Yep.
The defence Marshall Hall would have run was accident, in that, yes, Crippen did feed, for want of a better word, hyoscine to Bell, but in very small doses and only to calm her down. But he got it wrong. She overdosed, and that's how she died. And yes, he did dispose of the body, but out of sheer terror, etc.
Yep.
Now, I don't think that defence would have worked for a minute. How do you feel about that?
Yes, I don't think it would have done, but I have to say that the defence, because of course a barrister can only act upon their client's instructions. You can't make up a defence for somebody.
No.
It did seem to me that there were significant holes in the defence that he wanted to run. And holes that were incapable of being filled, really.
Now, the torso was wrapped in a pyjama top.
Yeah.
And the bottoms to those pyjamas were found in the house when the police searched it thoroughly. And there were lots of circumstantial evidence called at the trial, including the fact that the label on that pyjama top, where they went back to the shop to investigate the purchase, the label of that company had only been in existence since late 1909. So there was a date that was the earliest that garment could have been purchased and used to partially cover the torso. Other evidence, I've mentioned the boy's clothing, the fact that Ethel was seen wearing, flagrantly wearing, both in and not in Crippen's company, Bell's jewellery and the furs you mentioned, and so on. So bit by bit, they built up quite a convincing case, including cash deposits. Now, you mentioned money. Well, he was obviously getting money from somewhere. He did pawn, PAWN, a great deal of the jewellery. And in the end, he was able to put cash deposits in safe boxes up to £900. And in £900 in 1910, I found out, is worth about £150,000 today. So it was a substantial amount of money, Richard.
Yes.
Which the Crown said was obviously, the nest egg for his life ahead with Ethel.
Yes.
It took the jury 29 minutes to convict him. Pretty quick. So the Crown's case was accepted, the defence case wasn't. And there were things in the witness box. I mean, I as you know, I did treat myself to reading the transcripts of the trial available online. And he tripped up many times on the cross-examination, many times, and he was hanged.
Yes.
As I said, in the November of 1910.
Yeah. And then she was, after that, tried and was found not guilty.
Very quickly.
Very quickly.
It took the jury about 9 minutes.
Yeah, and went on to live, I think, until the 1960s.
She did. She went to America.
Yeah.
Ironically, on the day he was executed.
Yeah.
That's the day she chose to travel.
And she was, for many years, she was fearful that people would recognize her. She changed her name, but she was fearful that people would say, because there's been so much publicity and
absolutely
photos of her. And there were occasions, there was one job she had where it was quite clear that the other women in the typing pool were gossiping about her as to whether or not she was or wasn't, and she just left the job.
Yeah. Well, I mean, she was an English woman, despite her name. She wasn't an American.
No, quite.
Unlike Crippen himself and Cora.
Yep.
So yes, between us, with a few interruptions because of my bad Wi-Fi, we've told anybody who cares to watch and listen not the bare bones, but the story.
Yeah. So let me ask you this, Phil. Your counsel for the defence in the first trial, your client is facing a genuine risk of capital punishment, being hanged, and you've got to make a speech to, in those days, 12 good men and true.
Yeah.
What's your closing speech going to be?
Well, firstly, I'd have to remain faithful to the defence that was run.
Yeah, but how would you not spin it, but how would you portray that to a jury in its most favourable light?
Well, with great difficulty, I'm afraid. I fear it would be the most hostile jury I would ever have to address.
Yeah. Is it one of those cases where, and I know we've both had them, where you actually end up having to say to a jury, you're not going to like my client, and I don't ask you to like him, and he's done some despicable things in his life as a fraudster, but we ask you to stand back from that and take a cool, calm view of whether on the evidence you are sure that he's a murderer. So
yes,
in other words,
that's when his problems begin.
Yeah.
If as a defender you're saying, just concentrate on the evidence, put your emotions to one side, you're not meant to like him, he's a horrible man, we all accept that. And then there's the evidence that you and I have discussed. It's pretty powerful stuff.
It is, yeah.
I don't think.
But you do you not need to lance that particular boil of a juror thinking, I really don't like him at all, without actually giving him a chance, as it were?
Of course, no, you're absolutely right. I mean, that's what you would do. That's what I'd like to think I would have done.
Yeah.
The other tactic as well is to actually ignore the evidence.
Yes.
Which I have done on occasion, basically. And just give a friend Roman's countryman type of speech.
Yeah.
Lend me your ears. And just waffle and ignore the bad bits.
Phil, I don't think I ever heard you make a speech in which you didn't ignore the evidence.
Thank you.
No, not at all.
That's because I was always up against demon prosecutors like you.
Yeah, well, no.
I never stood a chance.
Yeah.
Something I want to ask you, Richard.
Yeah.
Because you are a self-declared expert on the Carry On films.
Well, something like that, yes.
Well, in which Carry On film, did Peter Butterworth play an Edwardian who'd killed his first two wives and was looking for a third?
Yes.
And in which film his friend nicknamed him Dr. Crippen?
The film where he was, his first two wives had died. And I think he says something like, my first wife died. She was poisoned by mushrooms. And your second wife? My second wife died in different circumstances. Why was that? She wouldn't eat the mushrooms. And it's from Carry On Loving.
It is indeed, 1970. Well done.
Yeah. Which is about a dating agency run by Sid James and Hattie Jakes.
God, Sid James.
And they had this sort of office where people would come along, and then he'd write all the details of the person down on a card and then put it into what appeared to be a massive computer behind his desk, feed it in, and then out would come a card of, the perfect match. This is the person for you. In fact, it wasn't. It just went through, and Hattie Jakes was at the other side, looking at the bloke's card and trying to find a woman for him. And she upset Sid because he fancied a woman who had come along there and was sort of chasing her. And when an eligible male came in and had his card put through to Hattie, she sent back the card of this woman who Sid was chasing. And he was going, I don't know what's happened. The machine's gone wrong. I can't understand this. No, she's not available, that one.
Oh, brilliant stuff.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I got that from a whole list of books, dramas, films, you name it, that were all in some way based or associated with Crippen. I mean, it's extraordinary.
Yeah.
A whole list of things. It remains a very gripping story.
Yes, well over a century after it all happened.
Oh yes, absolutely.
Could I ask you, which port did Crippen embark on the ship to go to Canada?
Which what? Sorry, Keith. Course.
Port. I think it was Amsterdam.
Antwerp.
Antwerp. Sorry.
Antwerp. Oh, right.
Yeah. He and Lenève fled to the continent. And they took the boat from Antwerp.
Yeah.
That's
which
right.
probably explains why the faster boat that Dew was on was also nearer to America because it went from Southampton or somewhere.
Yeah.
No, I was very interested because the very first time that I went to, no, not the first time I went to Canada, that was when I was 15, but when I first went to Canada and was going to university, I took a boat, but I took it from Liverpool, and it was the last year that more people travelled the Atlantic by liner than by aircraft.
Blimey.
It's interesting. But it undoubtedly, if they were going to Canada, they might have gone to St. John's, I suppose. But the chances are that they sailed down the St. Lawrence. And that is indeed a spectacular event. It really is.
When you travelled to go to university in Canada on a boat, were you not worried about the U-boats?
Well, they didn't give us each a machine gun.
Yeah, I was going to say, yes. Depth charge. Here's a depth charge.
No, Keith, I was going to ask you, I mean, how do you find Crippen when you interviewed him in the death cell?
Yeah.
Well, of course, it's like all murderers, he was charming.
As John Mortimer wrote, a wonderful book called Murderers and Other Friends, making the point that people who do dastardly things when they're in custody can become absolutely charming.
Yes.
And respectful.
Yes.
I no doubt Crippen had that ability because his abilities as a fraudster were based upon, he wasn't sort of extrovert or anything like that, but was quietly sort of a figure of some authority, and certainly purported to be understanding with women.
Well, every witness as to character or who knew him called at the trial by the Crown.
Yes.
Everybody said he was a very kind, very amiable man, very charming man, very, modest and discreet and self-effacing. They all said that.
Yeah.
That would have been my speech. You just reminded me.
Yeah.
That would have been my speech.
You see, one thing that troubles me about Crippen is that if you shaved his moustache off and took his glasses off, he would look exactly like Nigel Farage.
Yes, he would.
So
talking about his glasses, he did actually try and cheat the hangman. He smashed his spectacles during the night and tried to cut his throat with the broken glass, but the warders were on him and he failed, so he went to the drop.
It's interesting that you said, Richard, there were some similarities between Crippen and Haig.
Yeah.
And Haig also reportedly was just charming to everybody. They all wanted to be around him. But I knew an old boy. I won't tell you why, because I used to get up early to help distribute newspapers. But he was a schoolboy at the time of Haig's trial.
Oh.
And he said they used to, after school, say, what are we going to do today? What are we going to do today? And sometimes they would say, oh, let's go and see what's on in the court. And that the school children went and sat in the gallery, took out their bootlaces, turned them into little nooses, and dangled them over the head. To which they said Haig was absolutely impervious. He just carried on doing the Times crossword puzzle.
Yeah.
Now, gentlemen, I need to love you and leave you. I have driving duties to perform shortly.
Okay.
Well, thank you very much, gentlemen. You've actually done an hour and 3 minutes.
Well, there we go.
That's a wonderful.
Well, Rich has done an hour and 3 minutes.
No, we get overtime, don't we?
Yes, absolutely.
Double the salary. Come on.
Very well.
Anyway, Richard, enjoy the rest of your week.
Will do. Thank you. Yeah.
Remember me to
and
you
likewise,
yours.
but no doubt we'll be in touch. And you take care, Keith.
I'll disappear, Keith. Thank you. Nice to see you both.
I'm going as well.
Good to see you.
Not at all. Thanks, Keith.
Well, there we are, the two Bs. And as usual, a very incisive description of a famous trial. A little bit of what would you have done if you had been the prosecuting or defense counsel, and what was the background? What were the people like? What was the atmosphere like? And that's the sort of stuff that you just can't buy. So thank you very much, gentlemen, and we'll look forward to seeing them this time next week. And till then, we'll say toodle pip. I'll be back as of August. I will be back in. Where are we? Yes, I'll be back in the next hour with a program before Harry Atherton comes along at 11 o'clock our time. And is that right? Yes, that's right. And we'll get some analysis of what's happening in the world with very incisive views and a very good analysis. So for the moment, what we'll do is we'll say toodle pip for an hour, and then we'll be back at 11. 11. Yeah, what is it? Is it 10? I'm not sure. We'll be back very shortly. Right. Stay in the studio until the outro echo. Right. Okay. We'll be back in an hour.